is make sure you sell what you're doing in analytics to the publisher and to the editor both, that they both appreciate the value of what you've done, that you were able to give editorial a heads up on a breaking story that there's a lot of interest in, or you were able to help the marketing people sell more ads in a special supplement for the arts festival because of the work you did. We often forget to play up our role in the success of the publication. I know Rob would never do that, but it's something to keep in mind as you get into this type of activity. It's like, oh yeah, your research, yeah, you don't get a budget. It's like, hey, we're the ones that put the money, we're the ones that put the page one headlines or the leader headlines out there for the editorial staff as well.
Yeah, the lines have been blurred somewhat. I never dealt with business, advertising, marketing, in my previous life. And now I'm frequently in conversations with them. I have daily conversations with the marketing department because it is important for them to know what our readers are looking at. In fact, we had our sister company that deals a lot with client services and things like that. They have an analytics person who used to work in editorial. She moved over to our sister company, and she and I talk, frequently. And so we're constantly saying, hey, listen, this is doing really well. It's obviously football season. Everybody knows the Steelers around here. They drive all traffic. And so we worked with the business department last year saying, hey, look, here are the analytics. This is what they traditionally do over the last 3 years. This is what the Steelers content has returned in July during training camp. Have you considered X, Y, and Z for a marketing campaign or for an ad campaign? Here's what we could do online. We can create banners that can direct, sponsorship banners that can direct you to the Steelers content. And so while there is the separation of church and state, so to speak, we do frequently in editorial, I do deal a lot with the business side on analytics because they're just as interested. And, it can be anything from readership online to viewership in videos, downloads on podcasts, how many subscriptions on email newsletters do we have? It can be a wide ranging topic for sure.
Yeah, one of the things to be aware of is the need not just for the top scoring articles, but also the lower scoring things that are specific only to your audience. And the lesson was driven home to me in my first job it was just like a night editor position where I was filling in, and if the football score came in late, I got to put the final score in. That was my big contribution. Well, it was specifically the Steelers, and they had won a Monday night football game, and I made the mistake of pulling the Knights of Columbus Bowling League scores out of the publication, 3 inches to put in the final wrap up of how the Steelers had won. And boy, did I ever get my head handed to me the next day, especially since the editor's team had a good night that night. But the small readership or very segmented readership often is very important. And it's hard to get it to show up on the metrics that we often see on big things. Again, take a Steelers game, for instance. Everyone's going to be interested in that, but there are a lot of lower interest, very segmented things that don't let the metrics chase you away from it just because they're not in that, wherever your line is, 50% or 40%. Or where is your line, Rob? What do you like to see an article or a topic score that puts it in the spotlight for y'all?
Yeah, it largely depends. I get that question a lot from editors and from advisors that we have. Did it perform well? Well, it largely, and my answer is always, well, it depends on what's the return on investment? How much time did we invest in it? We can do a story that is a standard 10 to 15 inch story, takes us an hour, and if we get 4,000 page views and some new users out of it, and it's decent time on site, I think that's a success. I think that's a real success. But if we, we could take a week to write the same story, the same length story, because of one reason or another. And if it only gets a couple thousand page views, was it really worth that time investment? And so I think it largely depends. I always say, like, not all page views, not all users are alike. They have to be treated in the vacuum that they should be in. So our sports readership is incredibly strong. Western Pennsylvania is just crazy for sports. And so, the joke is you could put Roethlisberger or Steelers in a headline and the analytics are going to go through the roof. But we devoted 4 months to investigating a nursing home around here that, had a serious outbreak of coronavirus, and, a lot of people died. It was one of the worst outbreaks in the country. I'm very proud of the work we did. I helped direct it a little bit, and the numbers weren't nearly as good. And it's, so I still say that was well worth the effort, even though the return on investment was poor. So that's where I think it's good to be guided by the analytics, but not necessarily driven by the analytics. Had we been solely just driven by them, I think we would look at that and say that was a failure, because we only had 6,000 page views and X number of users, I forget, on that story. So, there are a lot of examples that go back that we could, I could cite with analytics that you just kind of scratch your head and say, why wasn't the viewership there? Why wasn't the readership there? We won multiple national awards for a documentary video we did. It was, I think, 6 months in the making. We had a synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh a couple of years ago. Our competitor, the Post-Gazette, won the Pulitzer actually for their coverage. One of my good friends helped direct the online coverage for that. I was very happy for him. We came back that last year, had a really nice documentary feature, 40-minute video. Like I said, won all sorts of awards. The analytics were pretty strong, but I almost look at it and say, wow, they could have been even better. Why didn't you watch the entire video? But that's, that can be a hard ask to watch, get somebody to sit and watch a 40-minute video as opposed to a 2-minute, Mike Tomlin news conference after a Steeler game, or James Franklin video after a Penn State win.
We have been talking here back and forth, Rob. I'm not hearing many questions from the.
I know. I'd love to hear from. Actually, I'm actually curious. The students who are on. If can we do this, Adam? Can we just, like, what fields are you in? Are you reporters? Are you in the business side? Are you in advertising? I would just for my own sake, I would be curious. I don't know.
Sure. I can speak for the 4 of us here. I believe myself, Ethan, Sydney, Taylor, and Joseph. We are all in the business insights department, so the business side of the Daily Collegian. And then Kirsten and Athena, I'm not sure. Do you care to introduce yourself? And
Yeah, hi, I'm Athena. I'm on the news side, specifically breaking news. I'm on Crime and Courts.
Cool.
Hi, I'm Kirsten. I was just interested in learning a little bit more about business insights.
It's interesting. I don't think that anybody starts out going to candidate school at their collegian or signing up for J school at Northwestern, hoping to become an analytics expert to support the either the news or the advertising side. But it turns out it's a pretty pivotal. It's almost like being the cut man in a boxing ring. If you can't get these guys back in the ring fighting with in good shape, the fight's over. And I think Rob and I both would agree that a lot of what we do is making sure that the people that we're sending into the ring have all the tools and aren't going to bleed out, to stretch this boxing analogy a little bit, that you're able to go in there and in your best shape and give your best effort. One thing that may surprise the students, and I've had this experience a number of times, just because you come up with a research finding doesn't mean you have to publish it or publicize it. And especially in the advertising end of things, it turns out that you really want to do a big special on women's volleyball. Everybody loves Penn State women's volleyball. And you do a quick little survey and you find out that 4% of Penn State respondents say they're into volleyball. Well, you don't have to trot that out in front of your advertisers. Go do another study and do it in front of Whitehall this time or whatever. It's not cheating. I'm not saying to it's not like medical research, but you don't have to publish or put forward everything you do. You should share that information, however, with the people in-house so they know that, maybe they need to tweak the direction they're going, or maybe they need to time it better. In certain fields, football information in April, well, you got blue-white, but, isn't really as hot as baseball information. Baseball information, now that we're going into World Series play, is very important, but people are also thinking about going skiing. So, sometimes you can get a little ahead of your audience and the metrics won't bear out your idea until you get closer to the time. But this is the time to be doing skiing articles, because people who are going to go on trips in December are pretty much calling their friends up now and saying, hey, what are you doing the week of Christmas and where do you want to be? And so there's a lot of marketing opportunities that may not show up in the highest echelons of your response, but are there that the marketing side could take advantage of.
Yeah, I actually meet every 2 weeks with our business side, the analytics side of things. We call it an SEO meeting. It started off as an SEO meeting and still is to a large degree, but we talk about everything and anything beyond SEO as well. But we look a lot at, so we actually asked, okay, we're in the fall now. Thanksgiving's coming up, Christmas is coming up. I remember this time last year, or approaching early November, we had a story about how to cook a turkey that went through the roof, and it was through the roof for days on our analytics. And the business side said, what can you do with that? Can you do that again? Like, yeah, we could. That's an evergreen story. Of course, we could write that every year. And so we talked a lot about evergreen stories. And so we had asked them, what in terms of trending keywords, what does the Trib trend for? What do people search for in our area seasonally? And so we looked at the fall, we looked at the winter, we started into early next year, and they gave us the analytics related to that. And it was incredibly helpful. And so I ended up meeting with our city editors, section editors, and shared what they had provided to me and said, these are story ideas that we really need to consider. Not only do our readers appreciate them, not only do people look for them in Google searches, but that's something our business side seems to think that they could even sell. So it's a win-win for everybody. So I completely agree. It always used to be, at least in my world, it was always users, sessions, and page views. Like those were the basics of analytics. And but things have changed. Things have evolved so much. A lot of publishers don't even necessarily care that much about those analytics and those specific analytics right now. They want to know about the number of subscribers to their e-newsletters. Paywall really isn't necessarily a popular thing anymore, but just subscriptions is a really hot topic right now in terms of publishers trying to get subscribers, digital subscribers. And so, yeah, you really want to know what people are searching for, what people want to read, because that's how you're going to sell ads, you're going to sell subscriptions.
Yeah, actually, I was hoping that we could unpack that idea that both of you had touched on. Keep going back to how business and news should be separate, but the analytics should provide support and guidance. That's something that our department, Business Insights, has made a goal really for this entire year, is to connect more with news and to really make sure that our work is serving a purpose and helping them out. How do you think that we should approach that? How do you think that we find the analytics suggesting something? What can we do to bridge that divide between news and business?
I would say, Do you guys look at the analytics then? Do you have access to the Collegian's analytics?
Yes, we use Google Analytics for the website, and then on all the social media pages, we have access to those as well.
So the Facebook, Twitter, analytics, whatever those,
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say that if your editorial department is not interested in collaborating with the business side, they need to start. And while, in my opinion, business should never drive what editorial does, I think that there is a collaboration that has to happen in order to be successful nowadays. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that it should be encouraged actually within certain constraints. You certainly don't want your business manager dictating what you write or how you write it. But I do think that it's important to have open communication about, everybody has good ideas, right? Or everybody should have at least some good ideas if you work in this business. And I've never been one to shut my door on anybody who wants to come and ask about, hey, have we considered consider doing this story or these topics. And so, I do think that if you're analyzing the analytics, whatever metrics you use, whatever is important to the Collegian, I think as long as you have a clearly thought out plan of what you think you could sell or what you think you could benefit from, it's important to let the editorial department know that. And again, if they're not open to that discussion, they really need to start.
Sometimes I think it's personality or tradition based. As I said, we had over 100 titles, so I saw a lot of the entire spectrum. People that I thought editorially were selling out the business, people that wouldn't even talk, acknowledge them in the halls that they were the ad sales people. But I would totally agree that as the analytics person, you're there, you can hand it in both directions, and you need to point out to both the possibility of success. They don't have to love each other to make the publication a success any more than, again, going into those sports analogies, but the quarterback doesn't have to like his tight end or his wide receiver. He just has to get him the ball in a place where he can catch it, and then everybody wins. And I think that it's obviously the best case scenario is, yes, when they're willing to sit down and talk about it, when you have your weekly or bi-weekly meeting and you go over the metrics and they can see. And most people, I think, now can see what's happening or where the numbers are driving things. And they're smart enough to accept that, if the white horse is going to win 8 out of 10 races, you better bet on the white horse. And if the metrics that Rob's handing me say that people are going to be interested in turkey recipes about now, maybe I should be thinking about pumpkin pie recipes too. And maybe as the advertising guy, I should be thinking about selling to Giant and Weiss and the locals farmers market, advertising based on we're selling pumpkins at $1 each, or we've got turkeys on sale for $1.29, whatever. I think the successful people are learning that, and it's almost a self-adjusting system where the people that do walk away from it or hold their noses up in the air have a much more difficult time succeeding. Not that they can't succeed, but they're going to have a much more difficult time succeeding.
So typically for Business Insights, we follow the standard metrics, or at least what we think are standard metrics to follow in terms of both audience, demographics, and also content performance. And we often just make reports that are very numbers and charts heavy, and we send it out to the news division. We sit down with them and communicate what that means. But we don't know if what we're doing with them and how we're communicating is altering any of the decisions that they should make. And both of you have touched on a few different ways that analytics could be used to make an impact on the news, such as writing another story or advertising to certain people. what other things should we be looking to communicate with News Division as a business insights department? What types of things or suggestions can we make?
Well, I'm going to throw that right back at you, Adam. Communications is a two-way street. The telephone, the computer, the email, whatever it happens to be, works in both directions, at least most of the ones I know. And it's somewhat incumbent upon you to find out from, whether it's the ad salespeople, whether it's the editors, am I giving you stuff that is helping you out? And how can I nuance what I'm giving you so it's even better next month when we have this meeting, and get them to respond. Like the numbers you send me on the different counties are totally worthless. I mean, I don't care where the guy lives. I don't care where the woman is. I want to know, is she a Steelers fan? Okay, fine. Then you know what to emphasize the next time. Unless, of course, in the research that you're generating, you see something very specific. A Washington County High School is going to be the state championship. Well, okay, maybe you better get back into county demographics now. But by and large, listen to what they want. Not that should totally guide what you give them, but it'll help you put a lead headline on your meetings with them that they're more apt to pay attention to. And then maybe you can feed them some spinach, as the dinner goes on. Stuff they need to know that's healthy for them, but they might not like to hear. And that comes up very much in the stories that are failures, if I can tag them that way, that are not as successful as what everyone thought they might be. And perhaps the explanation, it can be timing. The most famous case of that is when Farrah Fawcett died. She made the mistake of dying on the same day that Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson. Yeah.
Yeah, she got absolutely no headlines. She's the most beautiful girl of the 90s. Or the late 20th century, and she got nothing because she chose to die. And this can happen to a story as well. It's not that was a bad story. It was just something else happened that totally superseded it. And we're forever hearing about page ones being ripped apart or cover stories being taken down because something more important came up. And it's important to be able to guide your audience into what changed or what you feel changed the metrics. And as you get more and more into it, you see more and more of what's going on in your market, you'll get a much better feel for that even than they will. They're out there with rate cards and things of that nature. You're the one that's actually up in the press box looking at what's happening on the field and having the opportunity to say, every time this happens, something else happens, and pointing that out to an editor or to an advertising salesperson or to the business department.
I think it's important that both sides of the building are on the same page when it comes to analytics. What's important in analytics? What may be important to the business side, editorial may not care about at all. Maybe editorial should look at that, but at the same point, what's important editorial, maybe business needs to be aware of why it's important to editorial. So that's where I talk a lot about collaborating and communication. So, as long as both sides have some sort of vision of what the company needs to do to succeed, that's the starting point, I think. I think that's the conversation that has to start. And then, you can pitch things around topics. That would be one way of doing it. I went to a conference one time and they said, there are so many things out there in journalism that, analytics is, you can get into such a rabbit hole about analytics that it almost paralyzes you. So, the one thing that stuck with me was, do fewer things better. And so in this case, instead of trying to take all of analytics and boil it down to a couple of things that you may think that's important to them, find out what is important to them first, and then look at your analytics, see what maybe what's there that you could, whatever's important. If it's just selling, selling the app because you have strong app numbers, the push alerts do really well. Maybe that's something you focus on. and you leave the website alone, or you leave print alone, or just focus on one thing and try to do that well, and get small victories and kind of move forward from there. I think that would be one way to approach it. What that topic is, that's obviously completely up to you guys, but instead of trying to take the whole cake at once, just take small slivers.
Curt, did you have something to say? Okay. So Google Analytics is what we mostly use, and we are trying to be narrow, I think, as you put it, in what we can recommend to the news division. There's also the social media pages. I'm not sure how much involvement each of you have had in your positions with analytics for social media pages, or the impact that social media in general has had on promoting stories, but that is something that we also track. So do either of you care to share more about some things we should be looking out for social media, or some things we should look to analyze and provide suggestions to the news division?
Yeah, so I deal with all of our social media accounts. My department oversees all the social media accounts. We're responsible for them. So we look at the analytics a lot. And obviously Facebook is incredibly important. We get a ton of traffic through Facebook, just like every publisher does. But what we found through Facebook, which I think is important to understand, is those readers they tend to be less loyal readers. They dip in. They tend to stay a less amount of time on stories. They're really not loyal readers necessarily. Twitter, I got to be honest, Twitter is there's so much investment in Twitter for so little return. We get a substantial amount of traffic from Twitter, but the manpower we have to allocate to Twitter almost makes me not want to look at the analytics on it. We're constantly trying to drive engagement on those platforms, and we want the number of users to go up, clearly. We always look to invite people on Facebook. We try to be social on those accounts. In terms of the analytics, we generally just look at kind of the nuts and bolts right now. We don't get too deep into it. We post native videos like that we're told to do. We try to do the right things, and we do get a lot of traffic from it. But I don't put a ton of stock into the Twitter analytics themselves necessarily. I pay more attention to how much traffic comes from those platforms, how long they stay on our site from those platforms. I'm really interested in just the referral traffic. I'm not so much interested in the native traffic on our social accounts. I know it's important, but I prefer to have the traffic on our website.
Yeah, retention is very important.
Yeah.
It's the whole reason why people give out free samples of anything from ketchup to hot dogs to you name it. It's the hardest thing is to get that consumer to try something the first time, whether it's your website, whether it's a food, whether it's a new kind of hand wipe. And the challenge is to get that retention figure, because that's the easiest sell. You've already got them, they're converted. But how do you keep them clicking through again and again, or in any which way being active?
I think a lot of publishers are struggling with social media, like just the reliance on Facebook. Just read something the other day, how publishers again are just rethinking Facebook, and just, they own us. They pretty much do whatever they want with our content, and they're the ones who monetize our content. And so, I mean, in a perfect world, I wish we didn't have to rely on Facebook at all, but we do. To your point, Curt, about kind of like, just getting your name out there, marketing yourself. Our Instagram account has been blowing up over the last couple of years. We're gaining followers right and left. We put effort into it, but it's largely a marketing tool for us. It's, for as much as we'd like it to be an editorial tool, we get very little traffic from Instagram.
Can you monetize it at all?
That's the thing. Our business side they have not engaged us with that. And I have to be honest, I haven't engaged them that deeply with it. I broach the subject occasionally with them. And it's almost like it's over their head. They're not interested. They're focused on something else. And so it's been a tough sell, so to speak, for me to do that, to get the business side interested in trying to monetize social media. We've experimented with a lot of things. What's been great about the Trib, like I said, we killed our print edition in Pittsburgh, which was terrible, but we're given a lot of freedom to experiment with a lot of things, editorially and business side. And so, we started a Snapchat account. So, a bunch of middle-aged white guys trying to run Snapchat, like that went really well. So, I'm asking my 16-year-old daughter, 15-year-old daughter, like, how do I use Snapchat? What am I supposed to do with this? And I almost said, like, here, just take my phone and just go and do it. But it seemed, again, like Instagram, it's just tough to translate that audience into something that, at least in my world, the business side is able to wrap their minds around. And so we haven't really been able to get very far in that discussion.
An old editor on a farm magazine that I worked for had an analogy that the advertising, editorial, and circulation departments were like a three-legged milking stool. And when any one of the three legs is a little short, the whole thing falls over. And I think that we often see where one or the other department falls up short on coming up with things. And sometimes, in my experience, it's been better just to walk away from it. We're not going to do that. And we don't. I mean, if an individual publication has a desire, an editor is into it, fine, let them go with it. But I find that a lot of these different platforms can be very distracting to the day-to-day job of producing that 750-word piece that really is going to be the meat and potatoes of the lifeblood of what you do.
It's a great point. I mean, oh my God, our company, and I love my company, but man, we have a lot of people who were just stuck in their ways. We have a lot of older people too, who just don't care to get better. They're just like, this is who I am. And they don't want to evolve. And so I don't know, when you guys graduate or anything, but the younger people that we've brought in over the years now, over the last couple of years, have brought a great perspective on things. And like I said, even for me, like it's been 4.5 years, I really didn't pay that close attention to analytics. I was a sports editor at the time. And then we got rid of the paper, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm a news editor now. And then suddenly I became an analytics guy. And so, you kind of had to learn along the way. You guys are coming in when you go into the business world, when you graduate, and whether you're with a publisher or whomever you join with, you'll have great insight because you're already doing this. And you'll bring that fresh perspective of, what we did in college that worked really well. And it's not just like you were at a community college, you're at Penn State, for crying out loud. So that carries a lot of weight. I have to be honest. I mean, I didn't realize how much that carries until I got out in the real world. And so, I think it's really important if you educate yourselves now about really learning analytics, just how to read Google Analytics, how to read, even if you don't have Chartbeat or Parsley or anything like that, just learn it, just read about it. Really dive deep into the social analytics, because I guarantee you, your first job, you'll go in and say, hey, I know you don't care because you're writing a 750-word report, but have you considered what you could do if if you did this with your story, or, with your editorial content. A lot of editors, I truly believe, don't feel like they have the time to learn analytics or dig deep on it. And so you guys are at a real advantage.
We actually have one question from the audience. She said, from an evolutionary standpoint, how do you see your respective companies adapting to business intelligence tools and technology? And how do you think that will change the way you meet consumer needs or demands? So, yes, yeah, sorry, that was everything.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say the old cynical comment from me will be that there's only two reasons why publishers, editors don't do something. One is we never did that before, and the other is, oh, we tried that once. And part of it is that internal salesmanship, pointing out the successes that you've had, either getting an article on page one, getting a high readership article, making a sale, pointing out that people now want to know how to cook turkeys. It becomes a little bit of a marketing job on your part, and it gets back to the remark I made very early on. Don't forget to point out what you're doing to help, and make, not across department lines, but even within departments, people, I don't want to say jealous, but aware of the successes that Susie had, because she took our metrics, and that's why her story did so well. And I've got some metrics over here. Maybe you want to try them in your story, and see what it does. And their answer will be, I get darn about all this metrics crap, or, this is a good story. I know what I'm doing. I've been doing it this way for 40 years. Okay, well, you still using hot type, and are you still, recording on a notebook instead of a tape recorder? And do you use a cell phone or do you use a payphone to call your articles in? That kind of thing. And it gets a learning, and it's a tough learning experience for people. And even those that want to try it often don't have a grasp of what you're talking about. And part of it, think about your professors. The best professors are the ones that can actually explain something to you step by step. We've all had the math professor who puts x plus y plus z over 2, so you can see the answer is 5. And it's like, what did you just do up there on the blackboard? This is the same type of thing. You need to be able to explain the value and make them want what you're offering. I think that'll help in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, our company is constantly evolving with analytics, any kind of insights. Like I said, 4 years ago, all we really cared about was just getting page views up. We had basically gutted our staff, and we had a consultant come in and say, you need more content. And so we just were like, okay, everybody start writing. And really, it was just kind of like an all-in mentality. And so that what was important 4 years ago is still important to some degree today, but not as important. We're going to have, our 25 million page views a month or whatever between our homepage and our app or whatever. So what's important to me, and I try to impress upon this on my editors and my bosses, is, the homepage is okay. We'll be okay. We may drop a little bit. We'll ebb and flow. We'll be okay there. Why don't we look at what people were really looking at in terms of our loyal audience, and how long do they stay on these types of stories? And have you considered just starting a newsletter built around whatever, religion in Westmoreland County? Let's do that. And we'll make it something where we don't just spam people's inboxes. Let's actually build it organically. Let's try to build something. And so you try to use those analytics. We have through the American Press Institute, we partnered with them. I guess we got a grant at one point that we renewed, but it's called Metrics for News. And so basically it tracks every single reporter's stories and whether or not they read them through our free morning email newsletter, whether they read it at night, whether it was strong during the day. So our sports columnists are really strong late at night and early in the morning. And so we're constantly looking at that, or we should be, looking at that and trying to say, okay, let's innovate a little bit. You know, we're on a stable path here. What can we do better over here? And so that's how I see our company continually to evolve. And I hope we continue to evolve that way moving forward. You know, we brought a sports columnist on who deals with podcasts. He's the only guy who deals with podcasts. And I've been pushing now for about 1.5 years to try to start a unique podcast related to our readers. And I've struck out so far, but I'm not giving up because I think it's something that's worth exploring. You know, I mentioned paid subscribers earlier. I think that could be, you know, we don't do that right now. My publisher is one that is probably slow to continue to adopt the paid model online. We make money the way we do it now, and our print products are incredibly strong still. So knock on wood there. We haven't been hit as much as other publishers in terms of the print decline, but you know, we're still looking down the road at digital. This is going to be incredibly important for everybody to completely understand this. And, you know, what aren't we doing that our analytics tell us we could do? And so that's how we're going to evolve. And I think it's important for you guys to, like I said, if you understand that and can pitch something like, hey, you know, have you noticed our, you know, our restaurant stories do really well? Why, you know, do you know why that is? Or have you guys considered putting together all your restaurant stories or having like a weekly segment on new restaurants or interview these chefs or, you know, and then sometimes when you're on the editorial side, what's the phrase? You can't see the forest through the trees, right? You're like, oh yeah, you know that, yeah, people do read our restaurant stories all the time. Maybe we could do something with that. And so from your perspective as an outsider, I think it's, you know, outside the newsroom, so to speak, I think it's important you can bring that perspective to the newsroom and help it evolve.
Yeah, we talk a lot about pushing this information at the editorial and advertising staffs. I think there's more on the advertising side, but there's also some pull. And I think you'll find as your people go in and talk to the more sophisticated ad agencies or the bigger ad buyers, they'll find that the agency people are actually asking for metrics like the ones Rob and I are talking about. And it gives you an opportunity to shine or to say, yes, I can pull down those numbers for you. I can have them for you by tomorrow night or, you know, whatever it happens to be. And sometimes letting someone else be your best advocate for numbers, statistics, metrics, can make your life a lot easier because the proof is already there. Somebody at the agency that is, you know, dealing with Weiss markets wants to know these numbers. How long do the eyes stay on the page before they click to, you know, to the next page? How many people do you have in Eastern market as opposed to Western market, whatever it happens to be? I think that as you allow those people to drive the information that the business side wants, you'll have more success. Doesn't help much in the editorial side. Rarely will you have a reader call up. I don't think it's ever happened and say, you know, how many people actually read that article that you ran on restaurants or on the new chef at the Italian place. But your business people are very much into analytics. Once you get beyond the mom and pop operations, they are sometimes painfully driven by analytics to the disgust and chagrin of a salesperson. But I know we have the most readers in Center County. I know we have the eyes of the student. I know that, you know, we get how many separate page views per week on this. But if you don't have those metrics to show them and some figures to back it up, they're going to go advertise somewhere else. And so I think it's a little easier of a sale on the business side, even than the editorial side. Editors, and, you know, I'm an editor, we tend to feel that we have a pretty good grasp and feel for our audience. We know what the readers want and like and need and all that. But yeah, I don't care where I get a good idea. I don't care if it comes out of Rob's computer. I don't care if it comes from a half-drunk friend of mine at a party on Friday night. it's sometimes you get the best ideas in the strangest places, and those charts and those tables can be a great place to harvest editorial ideas.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I went to our business people a couple of years ago, like I said, during, right before the Steelers season. It was, May or June. I said, hey, training camp's going to be here in 2 months. Did you realize how many page views and how many people looked at our Steelers content last year? We didn't really do a whole lot online in terms of advertising or sponsorships. What do you think? And I they were like, oh, well, I had no idea. And it struck me as bizarre that they wouldn't have asked. They didn't know. And frankly, like, I feel like I'm wearing a business hat and an editorial hat anymore, because I try to think, how are we going to make money? That's not my sole reason to do something, but that has to be part of the back of your mind. Like, I wonder if we can sell this while we do it. And so, to this point, like, you don't even need the editorial person to say, hey, did you think about this? You guys will already know that by looking at the analytics and just knowing your market, right? Penn State football obviously is king, but maybe our numbers were strong last year with the basketball team, and you know what? Maybe there's some momentum and there's a lot of talk about the program, and maybe we could do something with that. Or we had a video hosting company come to us and say, listen, we already partnered with them for some news videos and whatever, but they said, the demand is really strong in Western Pennsylvania, period, because of the election. Have you considered doing these, 3 things, and you can make, your CPMs will go through the roof. Going, okay, well, let's talk. And so we had a phone call about it, and so we're going to go forward with it and see how it goes. But they knew, because of our history, we had provided them page views, back a couple of years ago. We're constantly talking with them. They're familiar with our site, with ballpark analytics of what we get, because they see how much money they make by having their videos on our site. And so those are all things that kind of play into this. But
one of the things along the same lines, Rob, is as an executive editor, I ran a large group of publications. And taking your idea, one of the things I always did was I would look in a calendar 4 or 5 months out. What is going to be happening in May that's of interest to this group of publications, the readers of these publications? I mean, December, okay, it's a slam dunk, it's Christmas, and March, it's spring training. We know that. But for instance, our golf magazines, they're very seasonal. It's a little late in July to be going out buying golf shoes. You need to have that golf shoe article for the northern readers in February, so they're all ready to go. And you take that thing, and then the analytics will prove that out. And then next year, it's even easier to sell. But a lot of it is incumbent on you doing the research and knowing what to look at. Not to this coronavirus and COVID thing. They could have looked at 10,000 different diseases, but the researchers who were in tune with what was happening knew right where to go, eliminated 90% of the possibilities, focused on the more likely ones, moved forward, narrowed it down. Hopefully we're going to see some solutions soon. It's the same thing with a magazine or a newspaper article. It's finding out people right now making their ski reservations for December, January, February. And I'll give you guys, the students, a little sales pitch for magazines. Sorry, Rob. But, figure out what it is you like to do. Do you like to ski? Do you like to golf? Do you like to cook? Do you like to travel? There is a magazine in every one of those fields that's willing to pay a reporter or a salesperson to work in that field, to rub shoulders with the people that are the movers and shakers in that field, whether it's medicine or whether it's backyard gardening. It's all there. And once you start to think like a farmer, for instance, in Pennsylvania, in Lancaster County, nobody wants to read about seed corn right now because nobody's going to be planting corn for another 6 months. But boy, come January, February, you better have those seed corn articles in there, because they're going to be planting in April and they need to have that time to make the buying decision. And again, the metrics certainly that we have on the green books bear that out. And that's another thing you can find just by looking at the rise and fall of the popularity of articles. Your turkey cooking article probably would fall on its face in March. So you need to have that perspective. And after you've been through a season or two with a publication, as Rob said, if it says Ben Roethlisberger on it, they're going to read it, no matter when it is. But most of your general run-of-the-mill news, or not news, feature type of content is going to be very seasonally related. And right now, start thinking about driving a car in the snow. Do you need snow tires? Is this even something that you should be entertaining in your? And that's what makes you as an analytics person valuable to the editor and to the business side. You should be out there talking to all the Firestone dealers or the buyer's council for Firestone dealers about pushing snow tires or about pushing tire rotation. Get those ads sold, get out there and get them moving. Oh yeah, good idea. And hopefully that's what they say. And if they make one or two sales, then it's like their idea, and it was a wonderful idea. And thanks for giving me those numbers, but boy, I sure sold the heck out of that one. Doesn't matter who gets credit as long as you're successful.
Yeah, planning ahead is key, right? That's so critically important. Again, a lot of times journalists are just happy to get through the day and get home and have a hot meal, right? Instead of just coffee. So
who makes you hot meals, Rob?
I know. I'm in my basement here. Come on. But if you can help the editorial department by planning ahead. And I think we had a couple of editorial people here. I think Athena said she was in breaking news, but you can help yourselves too by knowing what's coming and just a couple months out can make all the difference in the world to getting something accomplished. And it helps obviously to look back a year over year. Analytics is, that's critically important. Anecdotal evidence is helpful, but if you can have some numbers that back it up, that's really what will, I think, push an idea over the edge.
Can I throw a question in for you guys real quick? Wondering, you touched on, both of you have touched on this, but obviously the types of analytics that you're looking at now versus what you looked at 4 or 5 years ago have obviously changed. So if the students from the Collegian are using Google Analytics a lot right now, I would imagine that they might get a chance to augment that with the Parsleys and the Chartbeats and the Moats of the world when they get out into the real world. Curious, I guess, what if you had a crystal ball and you're able to look ahead and offer some thoughts as to like what are the metrics that will matter 5 years from now? Rob and Curt, will it be the actions taken by subscribers, paid subscribers? Will it still be social? Part of the question, I guess, is rooted in the fact that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Adam and everyone else, but from a platform perspective, you guys are sampling, trying to drive audience and drive eyeballs and interest from Snap to TikTok and beyond. Obviously, we don't know what's happening, long term with any of those platforms and what else is to come. But just curious as to sort of like as page views have become, the standard, or video views or video completes, whatever it may be, and likes, et cetera, on social. What are the metrics to keep an eye on, I guess, going forward, if you had to place some bets?
I would venture to guess what I think is going to happen is paid subscribers on a website will be what's important. And to that end, I think because there are so many things competing for your attention, right? And, time on site continues to waffle. It ebbs and flows, longer some days, shorter other days. I think what I hope publishers will do is start to look more closely at content that keeps people on their site longer, because those truly would become more loyal readers. So if you can keep the people interested, you can convert even occasional readers to loyal readers, and then those can become paid subscribers, which I think ultimately, if I had to put my money down, I think ultimately that's where the whole industry is going to go. I think paywalls will be gone. I think it's going to be all just paid subscriptions. And there are a lot of places having a lot of success with paid subscriptions right now. And so, maybe I'm just being hopeful that that's where it goes. So I don't know if page views will be the overriding factor moving forward. I think that will still be important, but I think largely it could turn to paid subscriptions, subscriptions to newsletters, where then maybe they become sponsorships. So I think those numbers will be more important, maybe more necessarily than just, hey, how many page views did you have? Okay, like we get a lot of page views from Facebook, but they stay on our site for 55 seconds or something. Like, what are we doing with that? Whereas if somebody who came from us from a email newsletter, they stayed with us for 3.5 minutes or something. Maybe we should focus on what those people were reading and why they're reading it. So I think that's where to me, that's where I think it's going to go.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as you're sitting here back in the late 90s, before all the analytics types of things like this. One of the questions every newspaper, every magazine asked was, how long did you spend with our publication? And I even got questionnaires from the Penn Stater that would ask, do you read all the content, most of the content, some of the content, none of the content, that type of thing. And however we capture those metrics, I think is perhaps irrelevant. I think we're looking at the same thing. We're looking at reader involvement, reader loyalty, reader continuity. You look at TikTok, for instance, might be gone tomorrow. A week ago, we all would have probably bet that it was already gone. There will be another platform in 5 years that we haven't even thought about that we might be using, or there might be a way of assimilating and aggregating a lot of the data that we're seeing in bits and pieces now. But I think we'll be looking for the same basic types of things, which, as I said, again, are reader involvement, reader loyalty, and a lot of that stems from how much authority that our particular publication website has in the audience. And you don't necessarily have to be good and fair and even-handed to have a lot of readers. We all can see that today. But I think for the legitimate press, that this is going to continue just as it's been for 2 decades, 3 decades before. We're just going to be measuring it and analyzing it. We used to have starch studies, which I don't know even if the starch company exists anymore, but they would go through and analyze all the articles in a magazine and ask, was it interesting? How long did you spend reading it? Would you read another one? We now get that information almost instantly, certainly overnight, with partially with any of the ones we're using Google Analytics. So I think we'll be asking the same questions, Jordan. Will we be using the whole different platform? I don't know. We'll be getting them faster and more conveniently packaged for our uses as researchers and for the advertising and editorial side. Yeah, I think it'll be bigger, better, faster, but I don't think it'll be all that quantitatively different.
I think loyal readers are you hit on it, right? I mean, that's the key. You want to keep your loyal readers. You want to serve them the content that they come to you for, and then try to convert those occasional readers into loyal readers. And you made a great point about TikTok and Snapchat, and a couple of years ago at the Online News Association conference, Snapchat had like the biggest booth on the floor, on the main floor. And so I spent time with them. We were talking. They're like, "Oh, it's great. You can report from stories, whatever." So we tried it, like I said. And maybe because again we're just a bunch of middle-aged folks trying to do Snapchat, but it was like we were just chasing the bright shiny ball over here. And we would get a lot of referral traffic from BuzzFeed or Drudge Report. Would always we'd get a ton of traffic through these places. And it's like, well, that's great. We're not going to turn them away, but those really aren't loyal readers. And how are you going to convert a Drudge reader into a Trib Live reader. Like, it's likely not happening. So, Curt, I think you nailed it. I think, you want to make sure what you do well editorially, right? You're an authority on Penn State football, Penn State athletics, State College, what have you, and convert those occasional readers into loyal readers and keep those loyal readers.
And to firm up one answer, Starch still exists, Jordan, just let me know.
Yes, thank you.
Just like the pivot to video, right? Like that was the big joke. It's like a joke nowadays. Like, you have to have video. You have to have video. Journalism is, we're just like chasing things. I had a long talk with a guy this morning, one of my coworkers this morning. I'm like, I kind of miss the days of just focusing on doing good journalism. Whatever happened to those days of just telling a good story. And so I think sometimes our industry complicates things because there's so much noise out there. Sometimes I think sometimes you have to just boil it down to the easiest denominator you can come up with.
Definitely. And don't forget the value added that as reporters we bring to our readers, focusing again on the local angle, focusing on what's important to them. You're going to be able to get the baseball, football score instantly on any one of 115 different platforms. But why did that game go down the way it did? Or is our star linebacker going to be available next week? Or what did the one guy say about the other guy's failure to catch balls? Is there a problem here that's not just mechanics on the field? And I think that what Rob is saying is that it's still important to have old-fashioned journalism, old-fashioned relationship building with salespeople. It never hurts to have another arrow in your quiver, all these, pages of metrics that we can throw at you. But stick to the basics as well. Stick to developing sources. Stick to being close to the people that buy advertising. Make sure you go in every week and talk to them, even if they're not going to buy an ad this week. Or make sure you go in there and say, hey, our metrics show that, you had 119 people who, clicked through from the story that was on page 4 to your ad, and sales must be great. And you'll often hear from them, well, we didn't sell a thing as a result of that. Well, we brought you 119 customers. The sales problem is yours, not ours. I mean, maybe your price is too high. Maybe you failed to follow up as a merchant, Mr. Advertiser, but we're bringing you, interested people. And that's a whole different discussion. That's marketing, not analytics. But again, those numbers can help to make the point for the sales side.
And not to belabor the point, but I mean, that's so important. And this came up in the AIG leadership webinar a couple of weeks ago or whatever it was, just having those relationships with people. So from the business side, like, I love when somebody from marketing or business comes and talks to me about analytics, like, because maybe they're seeing something that maybe I'm not looking at, or maybe I noticed, but I'm not really focused on. And just having somebody else in the building talking analytics with me, I like. Maybe I'm kind of dorky that way, but I like that. And so, and if nothing else, you build that relationship with those people. And so that's time incredibly well spent. And there's nothing like brainstorming with somebody, hopefully in person, at some point we get back to normalcy. But that's incredibly important, Curt. And I think it's one of those things that gets overlooked all the time. Like, well, I don't have time for this conversation. Well, I think you need to make the time.
We're coming up on the end of our session here, but I want to open up the floor first to any questions that anyone might have for Curt or Rob on something we have or have not covered. I have one question. There might be one or two more, but I'll ask one last question that I have personally is the revenue, the business model of the news organization and what that means for business insights. We are looking at how many people are viewing our page, so that correlates to the advertisements. What is something that we should look for that might impact the? Let me phrase it this way. Both of you have touched on how we should look at metrics that aren't necessarily page views or the highest statistics, but often that is related to the business sides and goal of creating revenue. So how do you balance those two, of not strictly looking at the numbers while also maintaining the goal for a business division?
So coincidentally, our business model is driven largely by page views. So we're a free website. Unlike the Post-Gazette, you have to pay to see the Post-Gazette. We're a free website. Anybody can come on anytime. We make money through serving ads to people, through our video hosting company, partnership. So for as much as I've been talking about getting beyond page views, that's still incredibly important to us as a business model. I think, again, that's going to eventually change because I don't think that that's necessarily a sustainable model for the long term of the future of the company. So, maybe I'm getting around your question a little bit, but it's important not to lose track of what's in front of you and make sure that you're continuing to stay afloat. I guess my whole points were, you need to know where you are, but you need to know where you're going in a year, 2 years, 5 years. And if your company doesn't know where it's going, that could be a problem, but maybe you can help shape where it goes based on your knowledge of the analytics. So maybe loyal users is important to you. Maybe it's not important to your boss, but then I would argue then you need to formulate an idea or a proposal around that and show them why you think that this is something that's worth considering.
Yeah, what he said.
All right, fantastic. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Somebody, this was my worst nightmare. We would talk for an hour and a half and nobody would have a question. Oh my God, no, please.
Well, I wish all the Collegian staffers best of luck. One of our hiring criteria always was to ask if you had worked on your college paper. You're doing the right thing. I think Rob touched on this earlier, and he's totally right. A lot of people say, "Oh, I don't have time. Didn't have time to do that in school." Well, I got 8 other kids, and I don't care what college paper you worked on. Collegian is nearest and dearest to my heart. But if you worked for the Lantern, if you work for any of them, you showed interest and you've got a little more of a background and you're familiar with terminology and you did things like you're doing right here this afternoon. And it's funny, it'll be a year or 2 from now and all of a sudden it'll click into your head. What did that guy Rob say about, what did he talk about? And it'll come back to you, or you'll be able to use it in a meeting explaining what you're doing. And so I guess I'll just leave with a word of encouragement to you all that it's what got me my job. Rob said earlier, it's what got him his first job. I think that you're doing the right thing, and hang in there, keep doing it, keep plugging away. There really is a future in this. There really is.
Yeah,
Pete's working for a living.
That's right. I concur with what Curt said. I applaud you all for doing what you do. I do think there's a future in journalism. Otherwise, I would have been out a long time ago. And I think, it's never easy, but I think, it's worth the fight. And I think what we do as an industry is incredibly important, more so now than ever. I hate that phrase, but it really truly is almost more so now than ever. It's incredibly important to keep pushing the truth, find sustainable ways to continue to publish, whether it's just in print or online. So kudos to you. The Collegian was the 4 best years of my life, I have to say. Oh my God, I love college. I cannot believe I've been out of college now for 23 years now, I guess. So enjoy every moment of it. it's a long grind, but the best years of your life. So good for you guys.
Thank you all.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Curt. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it, guys.
Great stuff. Thank you, guys.
We'll see you later.